Welcome to week 12. In this week, we're going to have two lectures, and they're each going to be talking about media buying. Media buying is typically something that's not covered directly in a marketing course, this being a Principles of Marketing course. It's a bit more specialized than you would typically get in a marketing course. But I like to cover media buying for a couple reasons. Number one, I used to be a media buyer for the first advertising agency that I worked at. And secondly, it's really where you spend a lot of your money as a marketing manager, marketing director, VP of marketing, whatever your title is. The two biggest expenditures in marketing are creating campaigns and placing those campaigns on different media options, whether it's digital or, in this case, traditional media. So when I talk about traditional media, we're talking about broadcast, that means TV and radio, print, that's magazines and newspapers, and out of home, which is kind of everything else. That's billboards and transit advertising, cinema advertising, all kinds of crazy stuff. So let's dive in. You have three learning objectives. Media buying is very much metrics, meaning numbers based. So marketing is a dynamic field with a lot of creative people, but when it comes to media buying, you're doing some baseline numerical analysis, comparing one media option to another. And the fundamental question media buyers are always asking is, which media vehicle is going to give me the most target audience for the least cost? So I want you to be able to compare media options and understand how to maximize media efficiencies for different target audiences. We'll look at some broadcast terms like spot versus national buys and some other things like ratings versus share. Let's start off by looking at broadcast, TV and radio. These are media options that cast a very wide net. In other words, your advertisement's going out to a lot of people and you don't have the ability to get super granular in who you send your ad to. It's going to go to an entire market. So if you're placing an ad on television in the San Diego TV market, it's going to run in all of San Diego, which goes all the way up to Orange County and down to the border and out to the east border of El Centro. So that's a big net. So broadcast tends to be used by advertisers that have large and fairly generic audiences and products that are fairly generic in user base. Things like snack foods and cars and insurance and packaged foods and things of those nature where virtually everybody is a customer. If you have a very niche and targeted audience and very specific locations in a market where they exist, then you probably wouldn't want to use broadcast. The history of broadcast, and now we're going to be talking specifically about television, is fairly interesting. You know, TV really took off in the 50s, and TV advertising and a lot of the major brands like Lysol and Colgate toothpaste and Arm & Hammer baking soda, these were small companies that started advertising and just became massive companies as a result. So there used to be a day when if you put your product on TV, it would sell because people watched whatever was put on TV. Nowadays, media is so stratified. There's so many choices. Broadcast TV is competing with social media. Newspapers are competing with digital news, and there's just so many choices. There's all kinds of outdoor and cinema advertising. So there's a lot of noise out there. But when TV stations, when shows first started accepting advertisers on TV, the way it worked is that it was a sponsorship format. So the original shows were sponsored by the advertiser. And on this slide, you see in black and white photo of a man in a suit, and that's Johnny Carson, who used to host The Tonight Show. He was the first, not the first, but I believe the second host of The Tonight Show and the host for many years. And you can see he's holding a cigarette, and he's holding, I believe it's I can't see the cigarette brand. It's a defunct, no longer in existence cigarette brand. But the advertisers sponsored the show, and as such, they had control over the show. The skits and the content of the show was intertwined directly with the product of the sponsor of the show. Now, it didn't take long for the networks to realize, one, we don't have any control over our shows, and our shows are being pervaded by the sponsorship content. But number two, the networks also realized we can make a lot more money if we control the shows and sell blocks of time as opposed to just selling our show as a sponsorship to one advertiser. So they switched from what was called a sponsorship format to a magazine format. And if you think of a magazine, magazines have ads from a multitude of different advertisers. And if they get more advertisers, they'll just make the magazine bigger. So they'll sell space to folks who want to be in their magazine. And the TV shows switch, the networks switch to this format from just having a sponsor of a show to selling space, i.e. like a magazine, on the show. And you can do some research there on that third bullet point. There's a link to the history of TV advertising, and that'll give you some more information. So that happened in the 50s. Now, there's two primary terms related to TV and the way it is evaluated by media buyers. And those are ratings and share. You've probably heard of the term share. Share is simply how many TV viewers are tuned in to a particular show at a particular time. Networks, TV networks, the ones who produce the shows, whether it's cable or regular network TV, they care about share, because share is telling them how many people are watching my show versus a competing show in the same time slot. If I was to ask you, what TV event do you think has the highest share out of all TV events? It happens every year, and I believe we're on our 53rd one because the Super Bowl has been around as long as I have, and I think they're on their 53rd year, and the Super Bowl usually gets like a 40 or a 50 or sometimes even a 60 share. That means 60% of the televisions that are turned on during the Super Bowl are watching the Super Bowl. But that also means 40% of them are not, folks who don't like football, and they're watching something else. So networks care about share. How am I doing versus the networks I'm competing against in a particular time slot, prime time or early news or late night, whatever that is. Ratings tell us what percent of my target audience, the audience I'm going after, as described demographically, age, income, gender, ethnicity, household income, education level, what percent of my target audience does this show deliver? And that's ratings. So a rating of 50, which would mean 50%, would mean that placing one ad on that TV show will give you a 50 share, meaning you'll reach 50% of your target audience one time. So that's ratings. So advertisers, the clients, the Colgate toothpaste and the Toyota motor company, they care about ratings. So what's this show rated versus this show for my target audience? Which show is going to deliver me young women? Which show is going to deliver me men ages 18 to 34? So different shows are delivering different target audiences. And I'm sure you've had the experience where you've been watching a show on TV and the ads that are running are ads that you're not even remotely interested in. You're probably not the target audience for that show. Maybe you're watching something that's geared towards old people or something outside of your demographic. So that's the difference between ratings and share. The last bullet point, and you see these red underlined hypertext links there that'll take you to additional information, is day parts. So day parts are the different times of day when you can place your ad. So here's all the actual day parts when you can place ads on TV. You know, there was a time when I was a kid that the TV would actually shut off and there would just be a test pattern, but now TV runs pretty much 24/7. Obviously the late night, overnight stuff, late fringe, post late night, which is kind of in that 1 to 5 zone, is very inexpensive, but there are people up and there are ads for things like anti-insomnia medicine and getting a job type ads. But if you look at the far right box there, you'll see prime time is from 8 to 10 p.m., which is probably later than you thought it was. So yeah, those 2 hours are prime time. That's when it's most expensive. Now, what do you think it costs for a 30-second TV commercial in a major market like San Diego? Just for the media time. That's not to actually produce the commercial, which can be several $100,000 in and of itself. Well, to run one 30-second commercial, and these numbers I believe are from 2016. You can click on the link there, but it's about $62,000 to run one TV commercial. TV's expensive. TV's expensive, which is why it's a big hammer used for large generic audiences and generic products that have mass market appeal. So I mentioned the difference between share and ratings in a previous slide, and this slide in this graphic is meant to explain in a little bit greater detail. So what you see here in the little house pictograms in this slide is that there's 10 houses. And 4 of those 10 houses are black, meaning they're dark, meaning they don't have their TV turned on. And 3 of those 10 houses are green, they're watching channel 2. 2 of those 10 houses are blue, and they're watching channel 3. And 1 of those houses is, I'm going to call that orange, watching channel 4. So out of all of those households, we can see that 6 of the 10 are using television, means they have their televisions turned on. Now, if we're channel 2, we're looking to advertise on channel 2, we know that out of those 10 households, there's 10 households in that market that have TVs. 6 of those 10 have them turned on. 3 of those 10 are watching channel 2. So ratings are based on all the TVs in a market. How do they know how many TVs there are in a market? Well, Nielsen actually tries to monitor this and gauge this by how many TVs are sold in a given market. So they use TV sales as an estimate for how many TVs there are in a given market. And they also use like averages per household based on the size of the population. You know, San Diego's about 1,340,000 people. And if they estimated, 2 TVs per household, they can come up with a number there. But ratings are based on all of the TVs in the market, whether or not they're turned on. So in this case, channel 2 has a rating of 30. 3 out of the 10 TVs in that market are watching channel 3. Share is out of the TVs that are turned on and are actively watching a show during a specific time period, like prime time. Out of those folks who have the TV turned on during that specific time frame, how many of them are watching my network versus a competing network? So in this case, we see the channel 2 households have a 50 share, because out of those 3 TVs that are watching channel 2, that's 50% of the 6 that have their TVs turned on. Does that make sense? So rating is all the TVs in a market, whether they're on or not. Share is TVs turned on, specific time frame. Okay, and this very colorful map of the United States that you see here represents all of the TV markets in the United States. We call TV markets DMAs. That stands for Designated Market Area. That's just a proprietary term coined by Nielsen. Nielsen is the company that monitors TV viewership. So they're a big company and business is good. So they also monitor cable and they're moving into social media. And they basically, Nielsen's the company that kind of audits and verifies as close as they can how many people are watching a certain show at a certain time. And that is what those networks use to determine the ratings and thereby the costs for their show. It's not an exact science. It's very much projected. It's not accurate. And they use small sample sizes to determine viewership for an entire market. And it tends to inflate the numbers. Now, why would advertisers tolerate paying on what are inflated numbers? Well, there's really no policing agency or way of advertisers to get together and audit this viewership other than not placing their ads on a network. So TV is highly negotiable, highly negotiable. So and this is why a lot of advertisers are migrating more of their budgets into the digital media space, because digital media is very exact and granular, and you know how many clicks you're paying for and what your budget is, and the metrics are a lot more clearly to understand. But not all products can be sold on social media. TV is still a big hammer and it works well for a lot of generic products. So going back to this map that you see here with all of these little colorful squares on it, this represents all the TV markets in the United States. Each new colored square or area represents a TV market. There's over 210 distinct TV markets in the United States. And you can see on the East Coast, they're a lot smaller. But if you look over to the California on the far left there, and you can see the shape of California. And in the bottom left corner of California, you'll see a little white square. Above it is a series of blue, and to the right of it is a rust brownish color, and to the right of that is a like dark green color. So the white square, that's San Diego. That's a San Diego market. And you can Google TV market map, and you can get this map, and it will it's interactive, and it'll click and give you what each market is. The reason I'm showing you this TV market map is because there's two ways to buy TV. When you're an advertiser placing TV, an ad on television, you can decide, do I want it to run in an individual market, what we call a DMA, or do I want it to run nationally across the entire US?
So with a spot buy, you're buying individual markets. This map that you see in front of you represents the 215 plus TV markets that there are in the US. And you can go in and buy those individual markets. For example, San Diego is a DMA, designated market area. And Yuma El Centro, which is two different states, but one media market, LA obviously. So those individual markets are called DMAs. They are rated by Nielsen, which is the TV viewership ratings company. And they're typically organized by city, but they're actually specifically organized by broadcast signal, hence Yuma El Centro, two different states, one TV market. So going back to a spot buy is appropriate if you are a small business and you are in one market, then you would want to buy that individual spot market. For example, if you have restaurants in San Diego, but not in any other cities in California, then you would do a spot buy for San Diego. A spot buy is basically you're adding up the individual spots, the DMA marks on the map where you want to broadcast your commercial. Now, A national buy is when you run your ad across the entire US. So, for example, if you're putting an ad on CBS Evening News and you want that 8:30 time slot and you're going to run it on every affiliate that picks up CBS across the US, then you would do a network buy. As a side note, when you watch commercials, the first commercials that show up are the national buys, the big companies that are running that ad across the US. And then after that, you'll see individual local spot advertisers that are advertising just in that specific market, which is why if you're watching regular network TV in San Diego and there's a commercial break, you might see some ads for Budweiser or chips or a cell phone company, a product that has a national presence. And then the second series or the later series in that commercial pod would be local folks, like maybe it's a car dealer in National City, specifically running a commercial. So there is a point where it is more cost effective to do a national buy versus a spot buy, because if you add up all the individual TV markets, they are much more expensive to buy individually in a spot purchasing pattern than if you were to just buy it nationally. Which is why sometimes you might be watching a commercial and you'll see an ad for a retailer like a Bass Pro Shop or a retailer that isn't even in San Diego, and you're wondering why they're running ads. Maybe they're trying to build up demand, or maybe they're coming here. No, they probably got to a point where it was less expensive for them to just buy nationally than to buy in all the individual markets. Now, when you run ads in markets where you don't exist, that's not always a good thing. But typically, advertisers are okay with that because they're increasing their brand awareness. You wouldn't want to run ads in a market you don't exist if you're offering products and you have no locations for people to go to. So that's the difference between spot versus national buys. When I worked at Jack in the Box, we had thousands of stores, but they weren't across the U.S. We're mostly in the southwest areas of the United States. So we would still do a spot buy.
So this process of placing a media buy can be pretty complicated. And what is very common if you hire a media buyer or if you're doing this yourself is you're going to say, here's my target audience that I want to go after. Here's my budget. Please get back to me and let me know what media vehicles you recommend and give me a media plan. So a media plan, in this case, it's really a media calendar, basically has all the months of the year across the top, as you see in this example, and then it has the week of each month, and it functions like a Gantt chart where it fills in the weeks that you're running your different types of media options. And on the far right of this sample flowchart of a media plan, on the far right column, you'll see something called GRPs, cost in thousands. And I'll explain that stands for gross rating points. I'll explain that in a minute. But if you look at this media plan, you can see, okay, well, they're going to be running some syndicated TV, some network day TV, cable. They're in some of these different women's magazines. So it looks like they're going after women. And at the very bottom there, it gives you the GRPs. And on the far right, it also gives you the GRPs by media platform. So, and you notice that cable is running every week, except for the last 2 weeks in Christmas, where the other ones are on for a while and then they're off. That's called a flighted schedule. We're on, we're off for a while, we pulse on and off. Because if you run a commercial continuously, it'll wear out and people will stop paying attention to it or even click to a different channel because they don't want to see your commercial anymore. So gross rating points, if you remember back a few slides, I was explaining what rating points were. So if you have a ratings of 50, that means 50% of your target audience is being delivered by an ad that's placed on that show one time. So gross rating points is simply adding up all of the ratings of the different vehicles that you're using. So in the case of this media plan, if you go to the far bottom right corner, you see the total GRPs are 1670. So this schedule is delivering 1,670 gross rating points. And in each month, you can see January at the bottom there on the vertical column is 222 rating points. February is lighter at 14. March is 177 gross rating points. Gross rating points are a measure of the weight or the strength or the intensity of your advertising schedule. So one of the first things that's going to happen when you call a media buyer, and broadcast is something you typically hire a media buyer, you're not going to buy it yourself because it's negotiated and it's complex, is they're going to ask you, who's your target audience? How many gross rating points are you looking to buy? And then they're going to take that sum and find a way to give you the most rating points for the least amount of money. So that's broadcast. I focused on TV. I didn't spend much time talking about radio. Radio also works on rating points. And the main difference between radio and TV is radio has different formats. So by format, we mean, is it adult contemporary? Is it top 40? Is it classic rock? Is it country? So radios deliver different formats. So that's a different piece that they have as far as here's our format, and that's going to deliver certain types of target audiences. But let's talk about print. So print, we're talking about magazines and newspapers. As we mentioned in previous slides, newspapers are on the decline. Magazines are still holding steady. They're doing pretty well with subscriptions. The great thing about magazines and any type of subscription print vehicle is that you're getting a subscriber. And when you get a subscriber, it's somebody who's actually paying money to receive that print vehicle, that newspaper or that weekly or monthly magazine. So you have a highly qualified reader, meaning they're paying for that. They're definitely going to read that print vehicle, so which means they have a high chance of looking at your ad. Versus something like TV, you're placing the ad on TV. There's no guarantee that they're even going to look at the ad. They might tune it off or might not be even watching TV when it's airing. Print tends to have ads where the customer's going to spend some time viewing your ad because they're reading it. So if you have to educate the consumer more, you'll be more likely to use a print campaign. And print is sold not on rating points, but based on cost per thousand and circulation. So we'll get to that in a minute. So print, we're talking about newspapers and magazines. And the way that print is sold is that you contact or go to the website of the print organization. Maybe it's Surfer Magazine or Newsweek or National Geographic or the San Diego Union Tribune or New York Times. You go to their website and you get the media kit. The media kit, and there's links here in these slides, the media kit gives you their circulation. Here's our total circulation, and they break it down by different geography areas. Here's our West Coast circulation, here's our East Coast circulation and subscribers. And they also have an editorial calendar. You know, if you want to advertise bathing suits, you're going to want to be in the swimsuit edition of Sports Illustrated versus the one that's on camping, right? So an editorial calendar will tell you which magazine editorial during the year is the best one to feature your products. Magazines have preset ad sizes, and magazines have long lead times. That means if you call them up and you say, I want to place an ad in National Geographic, and it is July, and you want to advertise in August, they're going to hang up the phone pretty quickly because you typically need several months of lead time because magazines are printed on these large presses and they have to put the magazine all together and send it off digitally, and they need several months of lead time to put together the ads that are going to go in the magazine for that month and make it formatted and look nice and everything. Versus a newspaper, newspapers are printed every day, so you can call and get in the same week. Newspapers have flexible ad sizes. You can get all different types of ads, sizes, long verticals and long horizontals, whereas magazines tend to have preset ad sizes. So that's some differences between the two. And print is something that you can buy on your own. It's relatively straightforward to buy print. Here's an example of some of the different magazine ad sizes. So, obviously if you're looking at a magazine, stuff that's on the right side of the page is going to have a higher ad cost versus the left because we tend to focus more on the right. The inside covers and the back cover are going to be more expensive, and you can see different ad sizes listed here. So different ad sizes and their positioning are going to vary the cost that you pay. So I believe one of your assignments is to go in and search for a media kit and get some information about a magazine. And that'll give you more information as far as how media kits work. So I'll save any lecture on that for after you do that assignment. I'm going to skip this slide. There's some links here, but what I can tell you about print, as you saw from the previous week's lecture with how money's being spent on ad budgets, is that print's on a decline. People are consuming their news digitally now. So certainly younger generation, they don't have much of an interest in newspapers. So newspapers are dying off. Magazines, being that they're super targeted and they're by interests like Surfer magazine or Men's Outdoor if you're an outdoor person, Men's Fitness. So there's a magazine for pretty much anything that you do. Magazines are actually holding pretty steady. They're having a harder time, however, because it's getting more and more expensive to print and produce magazines. Paper costs are going up and mailing costs are going up. So how do we evaluate and purchase print? Well, with broadcasts, we had a gross rating points, and rating points kind of drove the metrics. With print, they use cost per thousand. So let me explain this in an easy way to understand this. When you go to the store and you're comparing two competing brands or even sizes of something that you want to buy, and you're looking at, do I get the single box of Honey Nut Cheerios or do I get the family size Honey Nut Cheerios? You can look on the labeling of the product on the shelf there, and it'll list the price, and it'll always list a cost per ounce, right? So that cost per ounce, and you can look and compare and say, oh, actually this one, the family size is more expensive at 32 cents per ounce, whereas the individual size is only 29 cents per ounce. It's a better buy. So with print, cost per thousand is the same as our cost per ounce that we use at the store. So, and it's basically the cost of the ad, whatever ad size you're running. It says page rate in this formula, but that really just means the size of your ad, divided by the circulation in thousands. Now, this pertains to some of the handouts that you see in this week's resources. There's also handouts that kind of explain this in greater detail. So we use what's called CPM, cost per thousand. The M stands for thousand, it's Latin. And what determines your ad rate? Media is negotiable, same for print. If you're running a whole bunch of ads, you can get a frequency discount. If you're running some big ads, then you can get a volume discount for size of ad. Placements, like I said earlier, if it's for color, if it's on the front or the back or a special edition, those are going to cost you more money. So there's a lot of steps involved in placing an ad in a newspaper. The main contract that you're going to get from a print publication, whether it's newspaper or print, is an insertion order. The insertion order says, okay, we have you down to run this size ad in this edition on this type of positioning, and all the details of that and the cost. So it's going to have the run date, the size, the position, the artwork type, etc. And then they will, you'll send camera ready art, which means the actual film that they need to add it into their press and put your ad in there. And then after the ad runs, they're going to mail you a tear sheet, which is a torn out, or they'll just send you the entire magazine, but they probably don't do that as much now because it's getting expensive. They tear off the ad page and mail that to you to verify that it ran. So that's the same for newspapers or if it's also magazines. So that was print. We've talked about broadcast. We've talked about print. And then the third category is out of home. And again, you might never actually be responsible for placing these ads on your own, but if you pursue a marketing career, keeping in mind that the bulk of your marketing budget is spent placing your campaigns on different media platforms, digital or traditional, like I'm covering today. So the more you can understand the language and some of the evaluation tools for these different vehicles, it'll help you out. The third category is out of home. So this is a broad category. It can be bus shelters and taxi toppers and cinema advertising and ads you see inside a subway or a bus wrap on the outside. All of this is in the category of out of home advertising. Here's Times Square, which I've been using this visual a lot in this class, and you can see taxis and their taxi toppers. You can see buses and you can see these digital ads. It's basically outdoor advertising on steroids. So I use the term outdoor. The official umbrella name is out of home because that encompasses everything. And here's some of the different categories of out of home. Now, out of home is different. Like, how do you measure how many people saw a billboard on the side of a freeway? How do you actually know if you're an advertiser? Well, they actually use traffic patterns and population numbers to estimate how many people drove past that billboard. When you place a billboard, or most of the out-of-home stuff like taxi toppers and bus shelters and bus wraps, those are done in showings. So with broadcast, we had things like prime time and late night, and in radio we have things like drive time and evening drive. And with print we have subscription numbers and ad sizes. With out-of-home we have what's called showings. So showings are typically in 30-day increments. And the size of the billboards used to be called 30 sheet or 60 sheet. And a 60 sheet billboard is twice as big as a 30 sheet billboard. And that tells you the size of the billboard. And that's because in the old days, they used to actually take wallpaper, segments of the ad, and take all these sheets and paste them up there together. And there were guys that did this for a living. Now they use these plastic wraps. They just wrap, like saran wrap, the entire billboard. Doesn't matter if the billboard is fallen down, you can put a nice pretty wrap on it and the ad will look great. So they're sold in showings. There's digital, there's all kinds of types of outdoor. In the integrated marketing campaign, in the marketing mix stuff, I showed you several examples of outdoor advertising. Outdoor advertising, as we wrap up here, is shorter messages, so you can't put a whole bunch of copy in there like you would with the print ad. It's just going to be a few words, 5, 6, 7 words, an image. People are winging by very fastly, so it's directional, get off on mast for the nearest in and out. Short messages that need to be big, bold type and easy to see. So that's a little bit about traditional advertising. And I've got one more lecture around traditional advertising, and we will be getting into digital advertising in a few weeks. So look forward to that. And this is your homework for this week. Thanks for listening to this long lecture. Bye-bye.